Hi, everybody. This is the Weekly Rune Dagaz, which is the June Solstice rune. Solstice is this Saturday, the 21st. This rune is the half-month rune through the 29th of June, and this week's Runecast is available to everyone. And if you enjoy this, if you get good stuff out of it, please consider joining Runes for Change, which is my membership community that receives the full Runecast every week. You can join that by going to soulintentarts.com/join. And if you have any questions, just let me know. Dagaz is the half-month rune for June Solstice. So you might be going, wait a minute, if this is the end of the runic year, why are we ending on Dagaz? The calendar that I work with is basically held in place by the solstices, which for winter solstice is Yera, and for summer solstice is Dagaz. And so that means that Othala and Dagaz have to be switched for that to hold consistently in this calendar. That is not an unusual thing. What people consider the traditional ordering of the Elder Futhark is just the way that we first encountered it in completion, and the most common way that we encounter it. We do encounter it in other orderings with different runes flip-flopped. So that's not exactly an unusual thing. We have had probably 2 or 3 months of urging to be ready for this solstice. And that's not something that's happened before in the Weekly Rune. I've been doing this for like, I don't know, 14, 15, 16 years. And most of the time, it's just kind of a gentle reminder solstice is coming, get your stuff in order for how you want to honor it. This runic cycle has been totally different. It has been urgent, it has been with instruction, and it has been with the understanding that this solstice is different. What seems to be different in the runes that have been coming up is an awareness that who we are coming into this solstice needs to be actively addressed. So, what we're carrying that we no longer need, we need to acknowledge that and we need to put it down. We need to do that before this solstice, ideally. And the flip side of that is we need to put our stuff down because what we're going to get in clarification around calling or just life in this moment, this experience, that clarification is going to require maybe new skills, new teaching, maybe new investment of self in different community or different ways of being. And we need to be ready for that. We need to be ready to act on it. And we can't do that if we're holding on to stuff that doesn't suit us anymore. So it's not so much that this solstice is going to be hard or bad, but that it's going to be really intense. And it bears doing some pre work before we get to it. Any releasing work, any death walking that you know how to do to release aspects of your life, relationships, self, ancestral stuff, you name it, baggage, even if you don't know what it is, but you just feel residual stuff, dust it off before we get to Saturday and allow yourself some time to sit with this solstice and listen, feel, belt sense, feel the resonance of what it's telling you, what support it's giving you, what direction it's giving you, because that's going to set the pace for the next 6 months. And there is a collective component to what this solstice is bringing that is a moment we've been building toward, not just building toward like anticipating, but literally working toward the things that we have been doing, the contributions that we've made, the sacrifices that we've made. They are going to be supported, if not what can come out of them. This solstice is going to show us what that is. The rune that allows us to work best with Dagaz this week is Ansuz. Dagaz is the rune that means day. It's where we get the word day. And it means the full 24-hour rotation around the sun. So it's not just about day as in daylight, it is the full rotation. But we typically focus Dagaz on meaning sunlight, which curiously, there's a puppy right back there named Suna. I don't think you can see her. So because we frame our days as like twilight till dawn, sunrise to sunset, we forget about the space in between. We forget that there is space in between. And when we sit with Dagaz, particularly the week of solstice, that's what we're focusing on. The whole emphasis of solstice is suspension. It's not rushing into something or darting out of something. It's being able to sit with what is this sort of suspended, prolonged space of extra light that we don't experience any other time of the year. And from a spiritual standpoint, sitting with what that brings us or what it is to us. I don't know that it necessarily has to bring us anything. And maybe even more important, what are we bringing into that space? What might interfere with our ability to just sit and behold that stillness? And what joy, what celebration might we be able to bring to that moment? I feel like given the buildup that we've had in the Runecast, that basically was like, get your stuff done, get yourself ready, check the things off the list that need to be gone. I feel like there is something in the stillness of the moment, in that space between the extremes of light and dark, that is where we're going to find whatever it is that is our focus for the next 6 months. And not just our personal focus, like, what is Kelley's calling, but how does my calling serve community? Calling isn't for us. Our calling is what we do. We're the verb. Calling, the noun, is for our community. It's what we give, it's what we bring. And so, how am I in relationship with that over the next 6 months? Is there a component of that that needs to change? Is there something that I'm doing exactly the way I need to do it, but dial it in a little more? Hold these questions, whatever is most relevant for you in what I'm saying, in what comes up for you internally as I'm talking about this. That is what you need to bring into this stillness with Dagaz over solstice. Ansuz is the rune of life force, and people most readily associate it with Odin, specifically Odin's breath, which is life force. I often hear people associate Ansuz with mouth and with speech, which isn't incorrect. But when I look at the runes, I look at them from an animistic standpoint, which means, how am I in relationship with them now? How are they alive and conscious beings now interacting with the world? And how am I in relationship with that? And so Ansuz for me takes on this level of how I direct my life force, maybe sort of specifically speaking, but I look at it more openly as just emoting. Like, what am I giving? What am I transmitting into being in the world? And is it my truth? Bottom line, whether I'm speaking, drawing, dancing, whatever, however I'm expressing my life force, am I putting my truth into that expression, which is going out into the world to do its own thing? If you follow the traditional-ish ordering of the Elder Futhark, Ansuz is the first point in the Elder Futhark from an animistic standpoint that we see that we have agency, that we realize we carry this life force, the life force of all things, the life force of Odin, whatever being that guides you and is how your cosmology works. we carry that, and we don't just have it in us as a container, we create with it all the time. We expend agency with that life force all the time. And Ansuz is the rune that reminds us to do that with truth. It has to convey our truth. So when I sit with how I convey my truth in a day, to me, that distillation is a little intense. The way that I sit with Dagaz, and particularly as it sits at the opposite of the Futhark from Yera, which is the word where we get our word year. Yera means the way that we take inventory, the way that we sit with harvest and take inventory of what worked, what didn't, what we need to do more, what we need to never do again, what's new that we should bring in and try over the whole year. It is this sitting with the harvest that has occurred and the plans that we're making for the harvest to come. If we look at Dagaz as a distillation of Yera, they're sitting exactly opposite from each other. They're both representing the opening and closure of a cycle. With Dagaz, we have this how do we compress doing that harvest routine, that inventory into one day? I know I can't do it, and not in this system, not in American settler culture. So, what I bring that down to is how do we find meaning in a day? So, sun, not sun, all of that still on the table. And how do we find meaning in all of it? What relationships did we pass through in the space of a day that made our life meaningful, that made the harvest that we experience in a day's time meaningful? What relationships took away from it? What did we bring to relationships that blessed them and made somebody else's day meaningful and maybe kind of sort of made our day meaningful because we did helpful things for other people? These are the things that come up when I sit with Dagaz from an animistic standpoint. And what I feel like Ansuz is telling me in that is I have to be really truthful with myself about that. And it may be hard. If you think about it, it's probably a lot easier to go through what cycles work for an entire year as opposed to what ones work in a day. That's more intimate. That's involving more vulnerability. It's involving our ability to sit with relationships, meaning everything ecosystem, interpersonal, like romantic, friendship, family, community, all of it, even quite possibly cosmology, and be able to sit with how they are bearing truth in our lives and how they facilitate us to bear our truth in our lives. Because if they don't, guess what? They're not working, they're not functional for us. And that's the kind of homework that this solstice is really dialing in on. And in that way, I feel like Ansuz is incredibly appropriate. It is a reminder that we must go in truth. We must be true to ourselves. We must be true to our lineage, to the brightest, healthiest, most positive gifts, strengths, wisdom, knowledge, experience of our lineage and bear it forward because that is what we're giving to the descendants. Our truth must be in what we're giving to the descendants. I incorporate the directions into the runecast. I let the runes decide what they need to communicate, and then I start moving into the grounded spaces here that help me hold those runes for the week. And the direction is the component of the runecast that best indicates how we ground for this week. Like, what space is going to best hold us and give us the foundation that we need to do what these runes guidance tell us. The primary four directions, they uphold the space between earth and other. And they are what keep us safe. They're literally the container that keeps us safe and makes the laws of nature work the way they do. And then we have access to directions beyond those cardinal ones. And this week, the direction that we're working with is within. This is a spirit doll I made that represents the direction within. Within is the direction of Nidhogger. It is literally the caverns, the inner negative spaces within Earth, inner Midgard. It's the secret spaces within ourselves, also our own secret tunnels. And it's our torso, our nervous system, our gut instinct, and it also speaks directly to our animism. That is our personal relationship with and being on the planet, and our capacity of allowing body to be literally the vessel that we experience physicality with, and also the boundary or determiner of our experience here. Within is the direction that reinforces that we have to take initiative. Like, we have to stand in the center of who we are, negative spaces, secret hiding places, and we have to be willing to take those within our earthen spaces in our cosmology, within the secret places of Midgard, and hold who we are, hold our truth. Again, coming back to Ansuz, and stretch that into everything that we are, everything that we do, everywhere that we go. And this is, for me, an immaculate expression of soul in form. We have to stay in touch with the within of ourselves and the within of Midgard. That experience of being connected so intimately is our direct personal relationship to being here, to physicality, to embodiment. And in that way, it comes with a certain accountability. We can't avoid being here when we are holding the within, our within experience and awareness alongside our awareness of what the seen world is telling us and teaching us, particularly about ourselves, about our truth, and about our communities. What I find different about within as a direction is that it exalts both being in form and acknowledges simultaneously that we are other. We are seen and unseen. And again, we're talking about that liminal space between something that is like we assume what form is, and we make assumptions about what in soulness is, what being a spirit or soul is. And within has us look at where those two meet. What is the relationship between the two? How are you souling in form this week? That is what within is asking us to examine this week. Another facet of the runecast for me is working with elements. What elements are most available to us this week to be the agents that allow us to do whatever it is that the half month rune is asking us or giving us the opportunity to do. I view elements as what enables us to get things done. They are the epitome of agency. They are alchemy. They are the things that exist that allow us to get things done. And the element that we're working with this week is mycelium. Mycelium is an incredibly supportive element. It is quite possibly the one element that underlies every aspect of life, death, support in between for all of the above, birth. And in that way, I kind of think of it as the original midwife and also death walker. There's also no one meaning of mycelium. It means different things to different people. And it might be more useful to explore it sort of as the backbone of life and check in with it to learn how to deepen your bonds with your ecosystem. Mycelium, whether you actually see the fruiting bodies of mycelium network, it's everywhere. It is what carries the electrical coding, the communication that help all of your ecosystem stay alive and in balance, which means you are part of your ecosystem. And in this use, in its relationship with Dagaz, Mycelium is probably a good helper to understand how to direct your energy this week. It might also be a really good communicator if you feel like you're not clear on what it is that you need to death walk, to let go of, to check off your list approaching solstice. Or maybe you totally know what needs to be kicked to the curb and it's more the other part of it. Maybe mycelium can help you hone in on what your focus needs to be, and listening through solstice to invoke mycelium during solstice and let it be part of your stillness to know how you can best go forward. I think that the summary of mycelium is that it has all the answers to how to soul inform well. I also call in a season, and seasons are what sort of keep the underlying tone of things in check during the half month rune. And it also reminds us of the best resources we have at hand. Our resources are determined by what season we're in, and our season also lets us know what our ecosystem needs from us. For the purposes of the Runecast, I determine what season we're working in from this mat that has a symbol for each of the 4 seasons on here. I kind of sort of have 5 seasons, maybe even a whole lot more than 5 in my ecosystem. And so, like, if this is a aspect that you want to bring into how you work with the runes, I would depict how you determine what season based on what seasons you actually experience where you are. So, like, spring is when everything is reawakening. It's when everything is coming to life. There's new growth. There's this feeling of creativity, of tidying and order. And it's also the seasonal point that humans can sort of re-emerge outdoors. It's safe. We are that the ecosystem isn't perhaps quite as hostile as it has been in the winter. And so in spring, we can reemerge, we can enjoy what it feels like to be human outdoors. And we also have this potential to expand our innengarder outdoors in spring. So we haven't been outside for a long time. It's winter. Mysteries have happened. Shadows, wild hunt, death walking has happened. In spring, we step out and we know what our boundary is, right? Our Utgard. But perhaps in spring, that's the time that we can begin expanding our Innengarder. Our known territory can become more familiar to us because it is safe, we are supported. How we approach spring has everything to do with how we approach Dagaz and the solstice. And I feel like the energy that that's giving us is exploration, it's playfulness, it's curiosity. Again, solstice for me typically feels like 18 eclipses, and it's a heavy feeling. And I personally, I'm just kind of putting a pin in that for what this solstice brings us, because all of the indicators have been, we can't just show up to our sacred days and be like, what you got? We have to have done some level of preparation for them, not just ritualistically to honor this moment, but in our lives, in ourselves, to prepare our lives to meet that moment, to prepare ourselves to meet that moment. And I feel like spring is telling us that we can be light about that. We can be playful about that, and maybe even explore how your ecosystem wants to be involved with your observation of this solstice. That extension of outdoors, that humans re-emerging, being safer, that could be a memo for what this solstice is bringing us. I want to take a minute and comment on the relationship in the Etir happening in this runecast. We have Dagaz, which is the third Et, and in this observation of the Futhark, the final rune, and we have Ansuz, which is in the first Et. Whenever I look at the runes, when I'm reading them for other people or for this runecast, I notice what Etir are represented. And what that tells me is like the half month rune, which is the Gaz, that's the rune that we are most intimately experiencing right now. And the framing rune, Ansuz, is sort of like a framework for what we can apply to Dagaz, to the half month rune. And so Dagaz as the final rune in the third Et is really about culling through how we want to do this again. This is the end of a year, like this is the end of a cycle. And how do we want to celebrate that? How do we want to honor that in addition to everything that's been said about solstice? The whole deal with the third Et, this is my wording, this isn't some historic contextual thing or something somebody else said. The third Et is the rune of reckoning. It's the place where we decide if and how we're going to do all of this over again. We're going to start all over in the first Et, and we're going to explore how we soul inform. And then we move into the second Et, and we clash with all these other beings who are figuring out how they're going to soul inform. And then we get to the third Et with this reckoning of deciding if we're up for all of that. Do we want to do this again? And the beauty of it is that when we do it again, we're bringing all of that wisdom with us and all the other times that we've gone through this cycle. Several of my readers and community members have been with the Weekly Rune from day one. We have been going through this cycle together for umpteen 77 years. Here we go. Here we go again. And that's something to sit with. That experience of closure, that experience of letting go, and particularly given this cycle, maybe some stress is coming up with it. Maybe some real question marks around how are we going to do this again? What is ahead? That's all on the table with Dagaz. And Ansuz, as this sort of anchor holder from the first Et, is kind of telling me go back to that. Go back to the sweetness of the first Et, the things that made you excited about being here, the things that made souling inform playful and childlike and thrilling, to say the least. Those are the kinds of things to pull into how am I going to do this again? How am I going to show up all over again with all of this going on? The galder that we're working with includes Dagaz, Da, Dag, Daga, and it also includes Ansuz, An, Ansu, Aun, Aunsu, Os. So, what I tell people over and over, and always bears repeating, when you're working with Galder, that is the chanting, singing of the runes, go with what resonates in your body. Go what is felt in your body. And I always have people say, well, if you say it wrong, then you're invoking the wrong thing or you're invoking something you don't know. All well and good, nobody entirely knows. Nobody entirely knows how these were pronounced. And so, to some degree, we need to go with what we feel. We need to go with that truth and let it be the leading edge of how we're in relationship with the runes from a sound component. In terms of how you galder, it can be just the one syllable, it can be two syllables, that's up to you. Again, it's what works for you. And what works one time may not work another time, and that's okay. There's no like principle law that you have to do it the same way every time. You're not looking to make Galder fit you. You are looking to see how you are in relationship with Galder in the moment and getting what that relationship needs you to have, and quite possibly giving what that relationship needs you to give. Here is how the Galder came together for me. Daga onsu, 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 daga onsu. The way that I experience Galder predominantly is as energy hygiene. It moves aspects of my etheric field in the way that I need them to be. And the way that I experienced this Galder was sort of like a wrapping around the heart or heart and coming around the back, like true foundational support for high heart and heart. We talked about that in a different video. So really beautiful support for heart, which, more of that, please, especially now, especially with the tensions on the planet now, the spiritual warfare that's being experienced in our everyday right now. I feel like the courage and bravery that support of our heart gives us is what allows us to make the decisions about how we're moving into the next runic cycle. It's what helps us let go of the things we don't need to bring into it, and it's what helps us stand firmly on our truth with what we do need to bring into it. I would love to hear how this Galder worked for you. I would love to hear how you're going to honor solstice. And above all, thank you for sticking with me in this runecast for so long. I appreciate all the comments that people give me about it. And thank you for all that you do in the world.